Hello, hello, and welcome to the live recording of the Young Screenwriters Podcast. We are going to get started in just a moment talking about pitch books, pitch decks, pitch in your series. So that's going to be super fun. Um, and I'm excited too to look at. We have Theo's template and two example pitch decks that are really great. Stranger Thing one and the Adventure Time one. So that's gonna be fun. Um, Let me tell Carl to ping folks in Discord. There we go. How are you doing today, Theo?
I am doing okay. It's a long weekend here in Canada, so happy Canada Day for all of the Canadians out there, which
Oh,
is basically
Canada.
like happy hot summer day.
Is it your 4th of July, basically?
Kind of, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess
Mm,
there's fireworks. I don't really celebrate it, but it's a stat holiday. It's kind of nice to
that's all you
chill
need.
out.
That's all you need for a holiday. Some time to chill.
Yeah, exactly. I will not chill. Let's be real. I'm not going to chill, but I
Theo has
will
no chill,
I
right,
I
Theo?
don't have an ounce of chill, but I will play video games, which is the closest that I get.
That's pretty chill. That can be chill. Have you looked at the new Dragon Age video game?
Yeah, yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, I didn't like the first trailer. That
Yeah.
was horrific to me, but I'm gonna choose to be optimistic and have faith that it's gonna be great and not and horrifying and dark, which is
Yeah.
what it needs to be.
I was happy with their choice to include Scout Harding because I wanted to romance
Yeah.
her so bad, and,
She'll be a really great companion. I think the
yeah.
companions look fine. I just think that and I think that this happened with Inquisition as well, where the style of the teaser trailer was just kinda not on brand, which I don't know why they do that, but because they know,
Yeah.
Dragon Age has an audience and, we're specific. We're
You
specific
want
little
specific
girlies.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that. It did kinda feel like everything else, and I think that that's not.
Disney, almost felt
Yeah.
Disney-ish, and I was like, "Oh, no, 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 no." But I did
No.
watch, like, the gameplay.
Mm,
And I was like, "Okay, this looks less cartoony." So, I'm
yeah.
okay with that. I am okay for there to be some change. Like, I'm not staunch in that it has to be an exact replica of Inquisition. All I want is for there to be a resolution to Solaville in Hell, which is what happens when you romance Solus as a Dalish elf. And if I even get just like a 5-minute scene, I'll be pretty satisfied.
That's fun. There you go, that's all you need. That's really all you need. I did not romance Solus as a Dalish elf, but you know what?
It's the optimal experience.
To each their own. Cool. Well, I think we have some folks here and we're ready to get going. So I'm super excited to talk about pitch decks. So let's hit the music and we will get into it.
Let's roll.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Young Screenwriters Podcast. I'm Alexie, and our topic for today is creating a pitch deck for your TV show. And today I have with me Theo, who created an awesome template pitch deck inside of writing the pilot that we are going to share today and go over step by step. So, hello,
Mhm.
Theo.
What up?
So you created the pitch deck in writing the pilot. What was that based on?
So I started working on pitch decks in a freelance capacity for a variety of scenarios. So partially it was doing agency work, book to film agency work. And then I started doing pitch decks for friends and colleagues who were pitching their own stuff. So for directors, for people who were pitching their stuff. So a lot of what I would get is usually just like a big document with a whole bunch of information some log lines, some stuff, a bunch of pictures, kind of just the general idea. And my job in helping them would be to organize it in the way that's the most optimally attractive, but also captures the vibe and the theme of the show, right? Because it's not just the pictures that you are including that is going to capture the show. It's also the way that you present the information, the way that the font you use, the backgrounds you use, all of those things can help convey all that information. So it's really about being efficient in how you are creating that design document. So that was kind of how I got started. I looked at a lot of different pitch decks. I kind of analyzed what I would want to see. If someone was sending me, it would be like, okay, these are the key things I'm looking for. So the template started from there because this is what I was creating for other people.
Awesome. That's awesome. So to back up a little bit, we can talk about what are we even talking about when we talk about a pitch deck, or a pitch book, or however you want to put it. And I think what you and I both right now are talking about is this is a visual component of your pitch. You're taking in this case, we're talking specifically about TV series. You're taking a TV series idea and you're showing it to producers, to a studio, to potential collaborators. This is your visual presentation that helps people understand your complete vision for the project. And usually you do that in some sort of software that lets you have slides. Even if they end
Yes.
up like printing them out or doing a PDF or whatever, it's usually like a PowerPoint essentially.
Yes. Yeah.
Um and so there's a famous one that I really wanted to talk about because I think that at least for me it was one of the first ones that I saw, and I think it was because it was so beautiful that people talked about it a lot and shared it a lot. And that one is, of course, the Stranger Things pitch deck. So if you didn't know, Stranger Things was originally called Montauk. So I guess it was going to take place in Montauk and not, where do they end up? Indiana.
Well, yeah, because I think it ties into the Montauk project,
Yeah.
which was kind of what the basis was. But I really think that speaking to using your stylistic choice to showcase your show, this is formatted to look like a pulp novel, right? Like an 80s pulp book. And I
Mhm.
think that the choice to go landscape in this deck was so smart, because most of the time you are going to do it in a deck because it's just easier. It's easier on the eye to go through like a presentation. But for this, the vibe was so key to what they were trying to pitch. They wanted to say, okay, the story's great. However, the atmosphere is the main character of this story, and I think that this really conveys that.
Mhm. Absolutely. And so I'm going to drop the link so you can check out the Stranger Things pitch deck in the description. But to talk about it a little bit more, exactly like what Theo said, it looks like a pulp book. It's in landscape. It has very dark vibes. And something cool about it is that essentially every other page is a still from a comp. So the first comp that we see is this shot from ET where the kid is like looking in their backyard and it's all dark and mysterious and spooky. The next one is a still from this one isn't a comp. This is from what you were talking about, Theo, the Air Force Base in Montauk, Long Island. Um, then there's a still from Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So kind of throughout, we see a bunch of different stills from comps that all have the same vibe that they're going for. And something kind of neat about it is that when you see this pitch book and you know what Stranger Things looks like in the end, you're like, okay, yes, 100%. They
Completely on track.
absolutely hit it. And like one of my favorite ones is there's this still that has the different kids from Stand By Me, and it shows how, this is going to be a story focusing on these kids um in their adventure. And it's just they chose really great comps. It's just it really captures the vibe.
It's like this like Amblin, you know,
Yeah.
idea, and I think that's what really helped them sell it was they're selling nostalgia, right? So when they put this together, they're saying there is a specific audience of people, there's a specific cultural memory that we're trying to tap into, and this is what that memory feels like. And everyone looking through this, especially when it came out and Stranger Things didn't exist yet, would have felt, yes, I know exactly what that feels like. I know what I felt when I first saw E.T. I know what I felt when I first saw Stand By Me. And that emotion was what they were trying to elicit.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like it's also good targeting like it's hitting the childhood vibes or the young adult vibes for the people who are going to be the producers and things like that. So it's perfect in that sense too. And talking about these images, I'm also going to if I can find it, I'm going to share a link in the description, but I had a member of our community reach out to me, Rados, and shared with me the whole Bible for Game of Thrones. So we
Oh, nice.
originally only had like the first 3 pages, but then we have this Bible and it looks like it was also part of their pitch is really what it looks like because it has, a lot of um like kind of like how they're going to sell it and things like that. Bibles and pitch decks can have some similar information even if they're for different purposes. Um and I thought it was interesting though because their document is 50 something pages and it has no visuals.
But it's a
Um,
Bible, right?
yeah, I would say it
Yeah.
definitely leans Bible, but it's like there's a letter in the front that makes it seem like this is my pitch kind of a thing. So it's sort of like it's a mixed document, and I think that that's important to talk about too is that this is not an official thing. Like if you think screenplays rules are vague, this is even more vague. Like
Well, and the rules, like, you kind of producers will kind of just tell you, like, "Hey, this is what we like right now," right? Like, when you're
yeah.
having a meeting with someone, I remember the last time I got information, it was like, "Okay, we don't want any more than 12 slides," right? And it was very much just like, "Do not give us a 25 slide presentation. Keep it short, keep it simple, give us the vibe, don't give us a monster. We don't wanna go through that."
No, totally. Totally. I think that, it's it really kind of depends. It depends on who you are, it depends on who you're pitching to, it depends on what your project is. But I think for today, we're mostly talking about these like visually impactful presentations. And so something that I am so I've seen a question about this is so say you're putting together your own pitch deck, Theo. I'm curious what you think. And you want to throw in some aesthetics. This is something that comes up a lot now. Like the last few projects I've worked on have had this come up. How do you feel about people using AI art
Absolutely
in
not.
their pitch books? You don't think so?
Nope. Nope. I have a very firm stance against AI. I don't think it's good for us as creators. I don't think
Oh
that
no.
makes it makes sense to use. I think it's potentially harmful. And it's just the consent around the training.
Yeah.
I can't get past that. So for me, hard no, no AI. That's my personal perspective. I know there are people who don't have that opinion. I would never use AI. If I'm going to design something, I'm going to design it. I'm going to make sure that the material I'm using was created by humans, and that's just a philosophical stance that I decided to take.
Yeah. That I think that that's a valid stance and I think that, as you're putting together your Bible, that totally makes sense. I think that for me, when I've been given pitch decks lately, I would say 100% of them have AI art in them now, no matter like who they're from, big or small. And I would say that for me, the line is with that. I mean, so there's questions about if you should do it at all, but if you're going to do it, I believe that there needs to be a complete disclosure that that's what you're doing, that these images are AI generated and this is not permanent, that you're not going to be using this in the final.
No,
Like
because
those are
that's
the
misleading, right? If you're
yeah,
saying, "Oh, yeah, this is what the art's gonna or this is what it's gonna look like," it is very misleading to say that you created that. You did not,
right.
um, at
Yeah,
all.
so I've seen things like where they have a mix of created art and AI art, and people will say things like, you know, "These images are AI generated to establish aesthetic. This is not final. These are, um, reference photos. And I think that, you know, it to some degree, it depends on the situation. I think for me, I draw the line at anything that goes further than an internal document. If it is like shared between a small team, and then, you know, I think it's an option, but I might have a looser stance than someone like you, Theo, where you say never, don't touch it, not at all.
And
It's
I won't. That's my my
yeah.
personal stance. I won't touch it.
In terms of using it for writing, I wouldn't
No.
use it for writing at all. For me, it's kinda like it can help me very quickly find something that otherwise I would have spent forever combing Pinterest for. Um, that
See, I
kind of
find that
thing.
valuable. Like I love coming through Pinterest, and I love going through of that, and I love that process. Now, the problem that I'm seeing, at least personally, is that when I'm going through Pinterest, I'm seeing a lot of AI stuff come up.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
that's where I'm having to, you have to kind of use your critical thinking skills. And it depends on what you care about. But for me, I really care about our industry, and I care about our artists. And artists are going to lose their jobs. They are not going to be able to sustain themselves if we are using AI art. Um,
Yeah.
hire an illustrator. If you have a little bit of money, or you're able to trade something, if you need the art, if we don't if enough people don't take a stand against it and continually just keep using AI art, then our illustrators are not going to be able to have careers, and we are going to lose an entire industry.
Yeah. That's true. That is true. I'm curious from what anyone who's listening thinks. I'd love to see in the comments or feedback to us. How do you feel about using AI art in an internal capacity, or like using AI art in a pitch deck that you're going to be taking to producers? I'm very curious what you think, if you think there's any difference there. Um, it's a new frontier of of the industry, and I think that there's still a lot of questions about it. Oops, did not mean to close this. Let me pull that back up. But so aside from the aesthetics, the things that I think we can kind of take away from Stranger Things, though, is that you don't need to create new images. You don't necessarily need to create new images for your pitch deck. Comps work really, really well to help draw out um the kind of thing that you're going for. So thinking about what are other successful, that's the catch, right? Pieces of media
Yes.
that 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 reflect what you're going for somehow. And not every single one has to be dead on. ET is like sci-fi mystery with kids. That one's pretty dead on. But things like Poltergeist are not necessarily dead on Stranger Things, but there are moments that have that same vibe. And so you can kind of be loose with it. Um you can kind of be loose with it when you try to pull comps, but it can be helpful. I mean, it subconsciously connects your or not even subconsciously, it connects your project to successful projects.
And it's the easiest way to show somebody what your show is about. There is no better way than using a comp, and especially using a comp interest. It's the reason why people really like, A meets B, because they can see in as few words or as few images as possible, oh, this is the audience, this is the market of the show, this is where it's going to sell, these are the kinds of people it's going to sell to, and these are the kinds of additional um opportunities we're going to have. For example, I'm sure when this was pitched, everyone was thinking, wow, the merchandising is going to be great.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's yeah, exactly. Man, but so if you haven't had a chance to check out the Stranger Things pitch deck, pitch Bible, whatever. They call it a Bible, but I think it's a pitch deck.
I
Um,
would classify this as a pitch deck. Yeah.
yeah. And I guess just real quickly to establish what's the difference there. Bible is a sort of shared truth that is usually put together by almost always put together by the showrunner, maybe some of the writers. That's like it's like the shared source of truth for like, who are these characters? what is the idea, like what is the theme that we're playing with, what's the world, how's the first season going to go, who are these people, what do they care about. It's the source of truth that you can come back to, whether you're assigned episode 1 or episode 7, and understand the property you're in and have some kind of internal consistency. So it's much more, it's designed for the writers, whereas a pitch deck, whereas a pitch deck is designed for all different kinds of potential collaborators, potential money givers. So it's designed to kind of win people over. If somebody's looking at the series Bible, they're already won over at that point. You're not winning them over. You're just kind of telling them what's up. But so now I would love to take a peek at what is inside, what are the critical elements that you absolutely want to include in a pitch deck. So I also have a copy of Theo's pitch deck, and so we're going to look at both of them. But I think that something kind of fun is that at the very beginning of the pitch deck, you can have an introduction.
You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, you can do, that's it. You can do whatever you want. A good place to start is having some kind of introduction. In Stranger Things, it says Montauk is an 8-hour sci-fi horror epic. Right? So right away, the first thing it tells us is, what is the medium? So for your series, you could say, like, this is going to be an hour-long drama. They pitched it as basically a long movie, right? This was like a limited series pitch. But you can come in and say, this is a half-hour comedy. This is a sitcom. This is, like, what is it? Just be very clear very quickly. What is it? So people can kind of understand that. And then we kind of get some vibes. They kind of have like an extended log line, but actually I wouldn't even call this a log line. It's more like just vibes. Like their whole thing is just vibes and accomplishing the same thing that their pictures accomplish. So it's like set in Long Island in 1980 and inspired by the supernatural classics of the era, we explore the crossroads where the ordinary meets the extraordinary. The feeling of fear and wonder as Elliot approaches a frog-drenched shed in E.T. The helpless dread that consumes Chief Brody as he watches a boy and his raft dragged underwater by an unseen monster in Jaws. The crackling television in Poltergeist. The horror of a cackling clown in It. The friendship and adventure of Stand By Me. Emotional, cinematic, and rooted in character, Montauk is a love letter to the golden age of Steven Spielberg and Stephen King, a marriage of human drama and supernatural fear. So dramatic. So dramatic. What do you think of it, Theo?
I think this worked really well for the time that this was pitched. I think that in the modern day, less is more. I think that if you are somebody who has connections or you have a platform, you can get away with something like this. I think if you are a brand new writer with absolutely no platform and your first page has multiple paragraphs, people may be less inclined, right? Like you really are trying to showcase to somebody, one, I'm a professional. Two, you can trust me with millions and millions and millions of dollars. And three, my idea is really fantastic. And to me, a killer log line is a really great way to start. Now, that doesn't mean you can't start like this, but if you have this kind of long, prosy type thing, not all of and again, the people who are going to be reading the new writers' pitch decks are probably assistants. They're probably people who are gatekeepers, and they are looking to check off boxes. So they're probably not going to read this. They're probably looking for, does it have a log line I think is interesting? Are the comps comping? Is there a package together? Does this have merit, right? Like there's somebody who's going to look at this pitch deck before the people who are the decision makers, who are going to be going through and saying, does this have merit? Can we make money off of this? And that's a really hard line to straddle because you never know who's going to think what about what you're doing. So if that's your strength, if your strength is writing really great prosy synopses that you are very sure that people are going to read and they are going to finish them, by all means. If you are unsure or this is not your forte, and you're a tighter, punchier writer, um, go with what feels good for you and what you're talented at. I would say, like, go for the thing that you are the most sure that someone's going to read and finish.
Yeah, absolutely. So this, I think, would be a good time to kind of show a little bit of how Theo approaches this in our pitch deck template. So I just pulled that up on the screen, and right after we have a little introduction that tells you how to use the deck. But the first page that you recommend is, I mean, very simply, obviously, the title, and it's stylized to match it, and then immediately begins at the log line, right?
Yeah. This is what I have always done. Yeah.
And I will say, Theo, I'm going to share something. I don't know if I've shared it with you. Let me grab it. I used your structure to make a pitch deck that I shared with my manager. So I have kind of an example of how we did this. This is not AI art. This was an illustrator that I worked with on a project. But so, we just saw Theo's. You start with the title page and a stylized, something stylized there. This is how I approached that. You can change the font, you can customize it, make it fit your vibe. And so that's how I did that. And then so for people who aren't looking, basically it's just called The Deepest Places, and I have a picture of my character, and it kind of captures the mood. The font is one that helps show that this is a little spooky, a little
Spooky.
mystery. We have a dark background with some faded trees, and the character is in the front just to kind of give the spooky vibe. And it's also, since this is an illustrated comic project, I have the comic art for the character there so people can understand exactly what they're looking at. So, this could be anything, but I think that this is just one way that you can use that. And then I built out a logline page. And I remember that I have the logline there. I also included the thing about it's 10 episodes, 3-season series, blah, blah, blah. And I could not for the life of me figure out what to put behind it. So I put a very creepy hand.
It
So
works.
it's faded.
It's
It's a
effective.
very creepy hand. So, in this one, I didn't use any AI art, and I certainly could have, but as a point that Adam also brought up in the comments here, it's something else to keep in mind is that when you use AI art, it will almost always be able to be identified as AI art. And sometimes that is going to be distracting. I would say especially so when you're doing an animation or a comic or something that's going to be a visual medium. I think it's going to scare people to use AI art in your pitch deck because it's kind of like if this is really going to be visual the whole way through, you should be showing us what it's going to look like for real.
Yep.
Um, but so cool. So we start with the log line. And then we have this section, the next section here. Theo, do you want to tell us a little bit about this
Yeah, so
one?
the artist statement is a really great piece that I've always really loved enjoying seeing what happens when I create them because it's showcasing really what this is answering is why you and why now. That's the
Mm,
first question people are going to ask you. Why are you writing this story? Why are you the best person to write this story? Why are you writing it now? Why should we care? So your artist statement is your letter to the people who are reading this pitch deck to say this is why you should choose me. And you have to get very good at selling yourself. You have to get comfortable with it. It is, I think, for most writers, something that makes us very uncomfortable.
yeah.
But especially now, in the state of the industry that we are in, you've got to get good at pitching yourself. So this is where you pitch yourself. You say, listen, this is my story. This is no one can write this story but me. You could take this idea and never in a million years would it be as good as what I have written.
Yeah.
Don't use that word for word. I mean, you could. Um, but this is your chance. So I think it's a really lovely place to have that flow of communication to let them know why you should be the one to do it.
Exactly. So like the why now, why now is like why people are going to watch it now, why they want to see it now, like what is going on in the universe that makes this relevant. And that could be thematic. Like it doesn't have to be, oh, we're doing things about a presidential election because right now we have a presidential election. In fact, you probably don't want to do that
No, because
because
by
by
the
the
time it's done,
it's
it's gonna
over.
be
Yeah.
over.
Exactly. It's more like, okay, not the presidential election, but we live in a very contentious, divided political atmosphere in the US right now where like dinner tables can't talk about politics because people and families feel so strongly in other directions. So my story is about a family that's divided in that way where the family can't talk, that kind of a thing. So it's saying why now? It's connecting to the atmosphere, but it's not so specific that you're going to lose the moment. Like not something's like you don't want to do I don't know, something that's going to be forgotten in the next few months. And then the why is your perspective on this so good that they shouldn't take this idea to another writer? Is the honest truth of what that is,
Yeah.
right? It's and should they do that? No. Will they do that? Usually not. It does happen sometimes, like where if you come in with a good idea, sometimes they'll buy the idea from you and put another writer on it. We're not talking about them stealing your idea
Right,
and
right,
running
yeah,
away.
no one's stealing anything.
No.
Not
But
to
it
say that hasn't happened because there are situations arising right now about that we won't talk about, but for the most part, it's above
yeah.
board. They're just paying you for your idea and not for you, but you want them to pay you for you.
Yeah, exactly. So it's especially if you're new, you need to really make the case for why this is your story to tell. And people love that personal connection because that's going to help them market it too. If you can go and you can talk about why this is something that really deeply connects to you emotionally, that is going to help them sell it. It's going to make your story stronger. It's going to make people believe it and be more interested. And so this is a place to put in your perspective. So that could on so say you were going with that political what might you write, Theo, if you were gonna go with that political thing that I was talking about, like where it's like about a family and there's like a very contentious divide in politics. It's a sitcom.
Yeah, I think that if that were my scenario, and I'm extrapolating here because it's
Mhm.
not, but if it were, I would very much relate it to like this was my family life and I'm living it. I have
Yeah.
this lived experience. Like another example that I might think of is something like The Bear. The Bear is a captivating show because the showrunner obviously has this passion for fine dining and has the experience of these kitchens and what that's like, and that show would not be as good as it is without that perspective. So it really is, what is the perspective that you're adding to this,
Mhm.
and how is it a perspective that no one else can add?
Yeah. And it doesn't and we've talked about this in the past, but it doesn't always have to be that you know exactly what it's like to be in this particular situation. You don't have to have worked for the CIA undercover James Bond type crap in
It
order
helps if
to
you do.
it would help. It would be helpful. I don't know if you could tell people, but it would be helpful. But you don't have to have lived that life in order to pitch that show, but you do have to be able to find some kind of connection to them. Like, you could say something like, "For a long time in my life, I felt like I was living a double life. Like, I
Mhm.
had this one aspect of my life that I could share with some people, and I really had to keep it secret from others, and it was this conflict that always showed up in every single aspect, and sometimes I felt like I was, undercover because I had to live as someone else." So, that's just complete making it up off the top of my head, but that's a way, whatever your avenue is in, it's just why you are a good person to write this. Um, and so this I would say actually, if we look back at the Stranger Things, part of this, sometimes people put this in an introduction, right? It's kind of like this is a chance for you to be a little bit more first person subjective. This is why you're going to love it. This is why you're going to love it now, the why now. And this is why I'm the perfect person to write it. The Stranger Thing ones kind of implied it, right? Like it was leaning into the why now, it was leaning into a bunch of nostalgia that, you kind of have to make the connection yourself. But there's a lot of people who have a lot of nostalgia for this era, and we're now far enough away that we haven't seen it in a while. Like, it's now something that we can reflect on and be like, oh, golden era. That was
Yeah.
so, that kind of a thing. So that was kind of the why now. It was implied, but it was there. And then the why you, they very much demonstrated that they know this stuff, that they are very passionate about the 80s and these particular kinds of stories. So it's sort of a similar thing. And then our next slide, Theo, if you want to take it away.
Yeah. So once we've got the why out of the way, it becomes the what. What's the story? So usually this is one slide. Sometimes it's more. It really just depends on how deep the writer wants to go into the story. But this is your top down synopsis and the way that I would structure this is going through. I think I have this written in there. I don't have my glasses on. Going through your hook, your introduction, your inciting incident, your objective, your stakes. That kind of thing. So, and generally you'll want to have the whole story. Some people will structure it to have a little bit of a cliffhanger. I think that only makes sense if the cliffhanger is something that needs to be experienced. Like if I were M. Night Shyamalan doing The Sixth Sense, in that pitch deck, if I was making a pitch deck for that, I don't think that I would include the twist in the pitch deck. But I would include a hint that there's a big twist that will change everything about how you see this show. So I think you have to use a bit of common sense there of like how much you're going to include based on your story. But most stories you can probably get through the whole story, and it's very, very helpful to be able to convey your story from a top down on one page.
Totally. And it's sort of if you were doing Sixth Sense, you want to create in the reader the same experience as somebody watching the show would have, or the same experience it would be to read the script. So you wouldn't say, oh, and then they meet this boy and this character secretly dead. Like when you introduce the character, like Theo, parentheses, actually dead, does this. You wouldn't do that because that's not the experience that you're going to encounter as you're reading. You would present it as if they're real alive people that this kid is dealing with, and then later you would say, if you were going to reveal the twist, it turns out that they were all dead, so that even in that really mini condensed version of the story, you're having the same path, the same arc, the same like flow as somebody would experiencing your story for the first time. Let me see if what I did I think that I actually, for this one, I jumped right into my character, so I might not have an example for this. But yeah, the story, you get a quick overview. I ended up moving it down and doing more about world and stuff, but we can take a peek into that later. So story, just quick synopsis of what's going on. And then you take us into setting. So this is also world, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So this is not just where we're taking place. This is also a slide about how the setting influences plot and characters. And last week, Theo and I talked a lot about world, characters, and plot, and the connection between these three points, in the triangle triad, world, character, and plot. And so this world page is really about, okay, not only where is it set, but how does it impact things? To kind of go back to the example that I had of the divided family, it would be like, this is a home in 2020, 2016. They're like middle class. They're like this kind of thing where they have all these other issues that are coming up in their lives. Like you'd find a way to kind of tie in the setting to the plot and to the characters. Like we have a kid.
Why is it important?
Yeah. Why does it matter? Why have you chosen the world that you have chosen? And so for mine, I included, just as an example, a little bit about okay, this is because the whole setting for mine was a metaphor. So I said, this is what it looks like, and this is the vibe. This is what's happening internally. So you can approach it in a bunch of different ways. Let's see what Stranger Things did. Stranger Things kind of broke it up interestingly. where instead of really having a world page, they had the Montauk Project conspiracy page that kind of helped to
So that was
set.
their inspiration, right? So I think that
Yeah.
this was like, okay, this is the genesis of this story.
Yeah, but I don't think that they have like a world necessarily. So like they kind of do other things in lieu of the world where they're just kind of like expressing what the vibes are. They still
Well, and the
didn't.
world is so built into the vibe on this too, right? Like they don't
Yeah.
need a page to say, "Hey, guess what?" And they also put this in the introduction. So they don't need to say, "Hey, guess what? The world is a city in the 80s where spooky things happen," because we can understand that from all of these pictures. We can understand this from the design of the document, and anywhere you can make the design of the document tell the story, that really helps.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a little bit about world in this conspiracy because it's in this Montauk conspiracy page because it's like this is the kind of thing that happens in the real world where these secret bases were doing sketchy experiments and nobody really knows what was going on. So it's, it's implying this is a world, the story world exists where sketchy government experiments exist and where it is an active like part of the story, right? It's like there are things that we don't know. It says no one knows for sure what these experiments entailed, but the chatter runs a gamut of the weird and wonderful: alien contact, time travel, telepathy, alternate dimensions, mutant monsters. You name it, someone claimed it happened at this base. So that kind of thing gives you it does relate to what you eventually see in Stranger Things. Like, where for a while you're like, something weird is up. I have no idea what. Like, we don't know what form of weird is happening right now. We just know it's weird. Um, and then we get into structure.
And I think
Mm.
this is more important for television necessarily than it is for film. Like I think for film, um, and doing pitch decks for films is relatively new. Like pitch decks used to be a TV really only thing, but more recently people are doing it for film as well. And I think it just helps because a lot of execs are not they don't read, and that's just part of the it's just a realistic part of the industry, and
Yeah.
it's that they are hitting them visually is just easier. So I think more so for TV, this is important to showcase. Okay, now we understand this story. How is this story going to take place? Is it going to be 3 seasons long? Is it going to be 5 seasons long? The last information I got from Netflix and Amazon was that they wanted 3 to 5 seasons worth of content. They wanted to know that you had planned out, even though they're probably going to cancel that show after the second season. They want to know that if they invest in you, it's not
Yeah.
just 1 season and they're gonna be screwed over. So often it's, "Okay, this is how many seasons we've got. This is where all of these beats fall in the story. You can get as granular as you'd like, but this is just to really showcase like, hey, I've done the work."
Yeah. Exactly. So this is where in mine and in the Stranger Things one, we kind of bumped up the part of like, um, this is how many episodes the story will be. So you can bump that up or leave it here, but this is also specifically the place like where you're saying this is how you say like this is where the beats will land. So it's like a broader overview of like, okay, this is how the story is going to unfold over the course of these seasons. Like this is the structure of what I have in mind.
Because you
Right?
might and it's also to showcase how you're working within like multiple characters, because
Hmm.
you might have 3 different threads, right? And I think that how, excuse me, Stranger Things works is they've got the adults and they've got the kids and they've got the spooky stuff. So those are 3 distinct
Yeah.
tracks, right? So your structure would be to say, okay, this is a linear story, this is a non-linear story, this is told through 3 different perspectives. It's to showcase like this is actually what it looks like, because just your story is not going to be able to convey what an entire season of television is going to look and feel like. If this were lost, this structure would say we are going to be going through the current story as well as flashbacks, flash forwards, flash sidewayses, whatever, of our characters.
It would say we don't know
We
is what
just
it would
winging
say.
it.
We're just gonna make it up as we go, is what that one would say. Um, but yeah, awesome. And then the next 3 slides that we have here are really just like different ways to present your characters. So obviously, if you have a protagonist who's going to be a very important character, you can include either, like for mine, I had art because, like I said, it was a comic that I'm working on. So I had art of the character, but it's also perfectly acceptable to put in some actors that you think would really, really fit this role. And
Especially if you're actually packaging this, like, so when I do these for people who are packaging, we're putting in actors that are being approached.
yeah. And it might make sense if it isn't someone that you're approaching, just to be extra clear, to have like a couple options there so people know it's like, okay, it's this kind of a vibe. They don't have how
Yeah,
was I
you're
gonna
not
say
sending
yeah.
the script to these people necessarily. Yeah, so you
Yeah.
can have like, okay, here's 3 different actors.
Mhm.
Um, you know, and you don't need to name them, but you can. So like you could leave the names out if it's just vibe only and you just want to showcase this is what this character looks and feels like. Or you could have the name and you could have, you know, this very clear line of these are actually who we're seriously considering versus this is my dream world and this is what I would love.
Yeah. And on this page, you also wanna include, obviously, their name, their age bracket, that's just, like, basic screenplay information, and then a little short bio that gets at their inner life, right? That talks about their flaw, their inner need, what kind of a person are they, what's their issues, what do they want, what makes them interesting. Just like a little snippet of who this person is, and ideally, it should be compelling enough that, like, you'd look at this and be like, "Okay, that sounds like a cool role." Like, that sounds
Yeah, I
like
know exactly who to cast here.
yeah.
That's what you want. You want people to be thinking about casting. As soon if they're reading this and thinking, "Oh, you know, we have a retainer on Jacob Elordi and he would be wonderful for this role." That's the kind of experience
Mhm.
you want people to come out of it with.
Yeah. So make them all sound like extremely enticing roles is another helpful tip here. But so we have, like, your protagonist, we have some slides. Theo has some slides for other characters, and then a slide that this is an example of one that Theo included. This slide here has 3 different bubbles so you can put in different actors potentially um as options. And
And
so
yeah,
then
this would be the specific one. So for this one, if you were looking at specific actors, you don't need to include the roles. But so if you were to include the roles, it would be like these are the last projects that they were in, and that's why we're choosing them. So it's an extra layer of comps.
mhm. So if you're looking at this document that Theo put together, there's 3 different slides that relate to character, and you don't necessarily need all of those. You'll probably end
Right.
up duplicating some, like, you'll probably end up copying and pasting to create more characters of a particular type. It's completely flexible, but this is just 3 different ways to help you present who the stars are of your show. And then we get into the good stuff. Not that all this hasn't been good. But now we are at the pilot.
The
So,
juice.
the juice. So, this pilot is basically tell us in detail. It's still it's brief, but tell us, like, specifically, how does the pilot go? What happens beginning, middle, end, and at the hook of your pilot? So they really want to know what is going to happen in the pilot. Like, what's the deal? This isn't necessarily, like, you don't wanna go on and on and on and have really, really tiny font and have it all included here, but if you need to make this more than one slide to kind of convey exactly how it goes, that's usually okay, unless they tell you to limit it, but you really wanna get the vibe. This is your chance to show them, because this is usually what you have written, right? If you're
Yeah.
going in with the pitch deck, you usually have the pilot written and a plan for the other episodes.
Yeah.
So
You
this
should
is
absolutely have the pilot written.
yeah.
Yeah.
And probably not the other episodes, but you probably have a plan for the other episodes. So this is what you should really, really know. This is your chance to impress them with what you have done. And your hope is to make them read that whole script, right? You really, really want them to read that whole pilot. Um, and then for the next episodes, though, you aren't going in quite as much depth, right? You might have short summaries for the different episodes, but you don't necessarily need to. I actually, in fact, I wouldn't include like whole descriptions of everything that happens in your later episodes. Just enough to
No,
kind of
because that could
express to us
change.
where we're going. Yeah, exactly. And it could honestly, instead of episodes, it could be like the rest of the season and you explain kind of like briefly what's going on. There's a bunch of different ways to convey it. But basically, you want to go in depth into your pilot and then give us an overview of how the rest of that first season will play out. And then now we get into kind of the back end stuff, which is kind of credits your team. We're moving away from the story and we're moving into more writing stuff. And yes, here we go. It says, we had a question that said, so is the episode section more like a season structure breakdown? That is absolutely a way to approach this. So that's one. So when I did my pilot, I did do a few slides that explains how it goes. So I did 3, and I partially did that because I have art, and so I wanted to get to use more of it. And then for mine, I did a season 1 slide where I summarized what the whole objective was going to be in season 1. And I had a structure slide that said 1, 2, 3, this is what each season is about. So that was how I chose to approach it for mine. I'm not saying by any means that my example is perfect, but just showing you one way that you can approach it. This is like a slide deck that my manager and I have used. So
And they're all different. These will all be different. Like, the reason it's a template is just to give you a starting point to say, okay, these are the things I should probably have in here. But the most important thing is that it fits the vibe of your show. So whatever feels right, whatever you feel you need to zoom into, I've done pitch decks that are really focused on like sales data, where we've had, okay, here's the budgets of all of our comps and here's the budget that this film is going to use, and it's very money focused. It really depends on who you're going to and what you're trying to get out of it.
so sad. But no, that is
The
often a very big
business.
part of it. That a lot of times these can end up being business docs. Like, I mean, they are in a
They
way,
are.
right?
Yeah.
It's more about the collab and getting people on board to want to collaborate with you in your story.
This is
Um,
it's a sales document through and through. Like, if you were working a job and you had to go into a boardroom and present your product and say, this is why you should buy my product, that's what this document is.
mhm,
You are the product.
absolutely. Let me grab this link so anybody can use it, by the way. I believe I have the right one. There we go. Template link. I'll go ahead and I will drop it in the description for anyone watching along. By the way, this whole thing was created in Canva, which is a very awesome, mostly free tool. Using it free will get you very, very far. But they have some cool paid features too. If I could choose one person to get sponsored by, it would be Canva because all of us use it so freaking much. I love it.
Canva
Um,
cost, because I feel like my subscription's renewing. Hint,
yeah,
hint, hint.
call us Canva. Um, but so then the last few slides, we have a section where you can have bios for anyone who is part of your team. This slide here specifically is about the writer. So if that's all you got, if it's only you, then that's you. This is where you can write about yourself, your accomplishments. This is a little bit less like feelingsy than your why you section at the very beginning. This is more like, what's your deal? Who are you? What have you done in your life? And you can keep it as brief as you want. It doesn't have to be ultra fancy, but just a little chance to say who you are. And it's good because if people are passing this around, you want your name in the presentation, you want credit for it. So give yourself, this is a place for you to kind of promote you if this thing is to get shared around. And then one of our last slides is an opportunity. Theo called it marketing junk. You probably want to change that title.
Change that title.
But this is just another format that you can use, that you can play with to include comps and things like that. If you want to put in money questions or things like that. In mine, I pulled some comps, and I pulled like Winona Earp, Something is Killing the Children, and Blue Eye Samurai. So for me, I chose across different genres intentionally. So I chose like a live action show that that fit the vibe. I chose a comic that is getting adapted on Netflix that fits the vibe, and I chose a anime on Netflix that I believe was adapted from a comic. So all 3 of these were comic adaptations that were handled in different ways. So that's why I chose those. But you can include your comps here at the end. Of course, there's always the Stranger Things method. You don't have to do it this way. You could like intersperse some like vibey pictures throughout. You can
And I
use
usually do
Mhm.
interspersed vibey pictures throughout, even with like I would still probably have all of this stuff, and I would still have my backgrounds are always like really important, but I will usually have slides kind of in between all of the main sections. That is like either one really big picture that's really really good, or a couple of kind of collagey type things.
Yeah, exactly. So that was kind of my hope with showing anyone who's able to watch with us. Mine was just to kind of show that like, yes, this is the format. We're not saying literally use like the circle frame and put your face and have the background be like this cyan color. We're not saying do it exactly like this. We're saying here is something for you to start with. You should 100% customize it and make it your own.
Yes, yeah.
Like you should 100% make sure that the vibe matches, change the font, change the backgrounds, add in more pictures, add different slides. At the end of this presentation, Theo has a blank uh slide that just says section break. And you probably are not going to literally put section break in between your sections, but it's just a reminder that like you can intersperse section breaks. So like as you're transitioning from the more story side to the writer side stuff at the end, like the more marketing, like credits at the end, you can put in a little section break. Maybe your section break is a moody pick, you
Or
know?
it can say like team,
Yeah.
team, and then you have your team or have, usually I have a like 3 or 4 section breaks that
Hmm.
intersperse.
So, and then the last slide we have is just obviously like a contact information. Again, if this gets passed around, you want to have your name and way for people to get in contact with you.
And
Sometimes,
probably your phone number, to be honest. I just didn't put that in there because
because yeah,
I don't know
it,
anyone's phone numbers.
no, phone numbers. I never want people to call me, but I'll include it. If a producer calls me, that would be okay. But nobody else can call. I do not like the phone anymore. But anyway, so that's basically an overview of like a very straightforward pitch deck that you can use to create a pitch book for your series. So to recap that real quick, just to run through it all from the top, we had the title, we have a log line, artistic statement, story, setting, structure, protagonist, your other characters, pilot episode, additional episodes slash the rest of the season, writer name, like who's the team, marketing junk, which includes comps, and a slide for contact information for questions. So that's basically it. I would say that those are the essential ingredients of a slide deck. And the way that you choose to alter this is completely up to you. You can if your story works best understanding what the world is first, you can move that up. If you really need to know the characters before you know before you know the story or something, you can move that up. All these things, there's no rules. It's just really about what is the best way to convey the information in your story. And a way to do that, again, is to make it mirror the experience of consuming that story. So, what information would a viewer have to have in what order? Make that mirror what you're doing in your pitch deck. So, man, this pitch deck is pretty cool, Theo.
It's good.
And
I get great feedback, to be honest. Like my favorite part is, when whoever I've done the deck for will be like, "Oh, so and so from Warner Brothers or whatever loves it or whatever." I'm like, "Yay, that's so great." Like,
yeah, yeah, my manager was very happy with the deck that I put together using this. It's a good way to kind of like, even though you're going to probably be creative on top of it and change things around and make it suit your project, it's a very good way to make you at least intentionally think about, do I have all these sections? Do I have, like, if I'm going to leave out structure or if I'm going to leave out something, I need to know that I'm doing it on purpose. And using this template is a good way to make sure that everything that you're doing is very purposeful. So this presentation, this slide deck is something that we actually talk about in writing the pilot, which is one of our premier courses. And right now we are doing a summer promotion where you can get writing the pilot for 30% off if you use the discount code summer24, because I like to be very literal. So if you use the discount code summer24, you can get 30% off of writing the pilot. It was already a pretty inexpensive course. It was under $150, I think. I think we priced it like $147. This basically gets it down to $100, and it includes lots of stuff like this, where we try to just get into the nitty-gritty step-by-step stuff that we've always felt was missing when we went out looking for information. So when we would go out looking for, like, okay, how do you literally set up a TV show? What's like, how do you structure an episode within a series or within a season? But all these things, it was hard to find specific answers. And so when we eventually figured them out, either through talking to people, through our own personal experience, reading, we put together this course to try to make it much more straightforward for you. So it's very step by step, hoping to answer all the questions that you might have about writing a pilot episode and writing a series overall. And I will say that it works for TV, but it really works for any kind of serialized narrative. I use the techniques from comics that I've been working on. Even for certain types of video games, I use the overall ideas for structuring how different chapters of the game will go. So there's a lot of options there. I think that was the promo I had to say, right, Theo? Think so. I think I hit it.
It's a great course. You will come out of it feeling so confident with what you've put together. And we have students who, that we've worked with who've gotten optioned and who are doing really amazing things. And it's cool for us to really see, the strong stories that are coming out of it when people are doing the work.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we have different projects that happen in or different like free offerings that happen in our Discord, where you can come to a write-in with Theo once a week and you can get support as you write. You can come on Thursdays. Carl and I read scenes from people's work, so you can submit a 3 to 5 page scene. We'll table read it and give feedback on the spot. All those are free things to support you in your writing journey. And yeah, alongside writing the pilot, if you so choose. So we hope that you will check that out, see if it's the best fit for you. Again, that discount code is summer24. And yeah, thank you so much. We hope to see you next time.
Have a great weekend.
Bye, everybody.